Okay guys, we are live now and let's see what we have for today's price action. And we have a high impact at 10. Okay, and in next 5 minutes we have 9:30 opening, so let's check that out. Let's see this. This was the busy. Now we have traded below it, so let's see how it acts. I am marking that as the inversion now. And we have that high impact at 10. So yes, we have a high impact at 10. It is reacting from the midpoint of that gap, which was busy, and we now marked it as the inversion fair value gap. Now let's mark out the midnight opening price for Friday. That's the midnight opening price. Let's mark that out through. That's the midnight opening price. And let us also mark this gap, which is the midnight first presented. Okay, that's the midnight first fair value gap from today's midnight opening price. So between 12:01 to 12:30, that is the first gap. So we have marked that out and extended it. Look at that, we were below it. Once we broke that, came down, took it at support, and then we move higher. Okay, so that's the 9:30 opening. We have taken out these buy side, mark that out. That's the 9:30 opening price. Okay, that's the 9:30 opening. We have pumped higher and taken out these buy side, and let us mark the 7 a.m. to 9:30, that is the pre-market session. Okay, so we have taken that buy side out, and let's go on to the 15-minute. So here we were rejecting from the midpoint, and at 9:30 we just broke all that. Currently we are trading inside the Sunday imbalance, and that is Monday's first presented fair value gap. It is the midpoint, that is the upper quadrant of that Sunday imbalance, and Sunday imbalance is the dynamic support or resistance level for the smart money. Okay, and let's just check that out. That's the first presented fair value gap from today, so let's just mark that out. Yes, that is the first FPG from Friday's morning AM session. Okay, let's see how it reacts inside this. And that is the previous inefficiency, also the first presented fair value gap from the previous days. Bodies are trying to stay below the midpoint of that Monday's fair value gap and also the midpoint of that Sunday's imbalance, and that is the Sunday's opening price. Okay, so buy side has been taken, buy side liquidity. And also let me mark the 950 to 1010 macro, because inside that we have a high impact. So let's see what we can get inside this. So currently we are trading above the 9:30 opening midnight, and if we just check this out right here, so before 9:30, that's the 8:30 opening price. Okay, and if I just remove that, and let's just mark this as the 8:30 opening. Okay, that's the 8:30 opening price. What happened, we went higher and took out these minor buy side, that was intact. This gap, that was the first gap before the stop run, so that will act as inversion once we broke below that. So if I mark that gap and also send it right there, you will see that that very specific gap that led to that stop run is acting as the inversion fair value gap and started sending the prices lower. And here, once we got below this and inside this buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiency right there, so what we did, that is the buy side imbalance, sell side inefficient. Okay, so we went inside it, taken out sell side, here also taken out sell side, then again this gap, now this gap right there is acting as the inversion the same way it did here. It will just reverse its role and look at that, because that is the very first gap before the stop run right there, that's the stop run, and once it got breached on the upside it would act as the inversion, and look at that. Okay, so we dipped inside the first presented fair value gap from today. Okay, and we are staying above the midpoint as of now. Okay, so these two inversions, can see how beautifully they delivered, and that is what my model is. Okay, if we get a bump above this high and the Sunday's opening, and then inside 950 to 1010 macro, if we get a reversal, let's see if we can get that. We went inside the first presented fair value gap from today, stayed above the midpoint, and we took that high out. Now we are trying to move above the Sunday's opening. Let's see. And also let us mark this CB right there. That is the CB, sell side imbalance and buy side inefficiency. Let's see how it reacts inside this CB, which is 15-minute CB, and that is the Sunday's opening. We'll see if this gap would act as the inversion. That is the inversion. I'm trying to look at it. If we get a break below this, bodies are trying to stay inside it, so that is not good. Look at that, how we went inside that first inefficiency from the previous days and it reacted from it, and again we went inside this, tapped it, I would like to see a break below that completely and closing below that gap, and then after that it should come down, break these first presented fair value gap from Friday. We need a body closing below this gap, but I don't like the way it is just consolidating. Can also bump up. We didn't get a body closure below. It is reacting from the midpoint, but still look at that, body is staying inside that. Look at that, how bodies are respecting it from both the sides. Yes, I would like to see something like that, and it should now close below that gap. That is something I was looking for. That is good now. And that is the Monday's first gap. Look at that. So I'm looking to take a shot